Aaron, what's going on, man? Welcome to the Dad Edge, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, Larry. I'm excited about this.
I'm excited too, man. I love your story. I've done a ton of homework on you. It's such a story of resilience. It's such a story of overcoming the odds. But I would love for you to just start out with your story of what happened to you back on December 8th, 2011.
Well, I was you growing up. I was the all-American slacker, right? Enough talent and natural ability, and peppered with a little BS, and I never really had to try very hard to get by. B's and C kind of life, um, until I got to college. And then everybody who had already learned work ethic, it just crushed. And I found myself, 3 semester freshman, gaining that freshman 50. And
Freshman 50.
yeah. And um, out on my butt because on academic probation, and trying to figure out what just happened, right? And so I decided I needed to get those core values, those internal things that everybody else had, work ethic and achievement goals, some kind of ambition towards the future. I was really in the moment. I was very social, very, until remember the freshman 50. Um, but I didn't have a vision for the future. So I just picked a purpose, a goal, something that would tide me over until I really figured out what I want to do with my life. And I always loved cooking. I was cooking since I could reach over the counter, and um, uh, during high school and college to pay for beer money. I worked my way from Chuck E. Cheese up to McDonald's, and then through every casual dining restaurant in my hometown. The Chili's, Fuddruckers, all those places. And so I enjoyed cooking. That's what I knew, and I decided I was going to be a chef. Only I needed the tuition money back that I just pissed away. So I decided to join the Navy. Absolutely knew my entire life up until a month before I enlisted I'd never be in the military. But I saw those recruiting videos, the commercials when you were growing up. The let the adventure begin, see the world, join the Navy, and I always loved the sense of I had a huge sense of adventure. I love to travel the world. The Navy seemed like one of those things I'd never be shoved into given a rifle and sent to the jungle or the desert. And the Navy, which is true, they have all the best duty stations that are all very close to the beach. So I decided I'd be a cook in the Navy and do my 4 years, get out, and go to culinary school. Only they told me to be a cook and sent me to Italy. And within a couple of years, I was cooking for a 3-star admiral
Wow.
as a personal chef on the flagship for the Sixth Fleet, and cruising around the Mediterranean. Um, Hitting all these ports while on duty. Off duty, when I was out of uniform, I was taking these, they call them MWR, morale, welfare, recreation trips, uh, to like Paris and Munich for Oktoberfest. Like, just hardship duty, it definitely was not. But I was, I was being promoted quickly and ahead of my peers because, funny enough, I picked up those internal uh, values and skills, but I'd also accidentally picked up a few external ones like sense of duty and that teamwork and leadership and selfless service. And I really fell in love with being a sailor, being a service member. And of course, this was early 2000s, and before we knew it, we were in two wars. And having this, newly developed, evolved me, uh, I, I knew that my real skills, my real abilities, uh, would be better served, and I would better serve the overall mission in a different capacity than cooking for the admiral and his top brass. So I volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan, and
Wow.
of course, Navy cook. I was assigned as the head cook at a dining facility, an Army chow hall in Farah, Afghanistan. And now I had one other Navy cook and nine local national Afghan cooks, and feeding five, six, 700
Wow.
NATO troops. Ironically, there were a couple platoons of Italian special forces on the base, so I got to practice the lingo I'd picked up in Italy, uh, in Afghanistan. And I also traded some of those MREs for prosciutto and espresso, and so I had a great time, and I was closer to with quote unquote action, and I was heading in the right direction, but I was still a Navy cook. But when I was there, I met these EOD technicians, explosive ordnance disposal, the military's bomb squad, and everything about that job. The fact that they're first responders on the battlefield, they're running into the danger when everybody else is running out. This tight knit brotherhood within the military, uh, and the fact that it's very technologically challenging. Everything about it attracted me to it. So I requested to switch from Navy cook to Navy EOD tech, and the Navy said no, thank you. No, uh, they're not taking cooks into the program. So when my deployment was up, my enlistment, my contract was coming to an end, and I could either re-enlist or walk. And what I did was I took my service record over to the Army recruiter, and I switched uniforms, switched jobs, got to keep my rank. So I went from petty officer second class to sergeant, and I started learning how to be an EOD technician.
Wow.
And
Can
soon
I
enough,
can I ask you a
was it?
question about that? I just want to, and I don't mean to cut you off. I'm so curious about this. You go from this really cush job, right? And all the perks of being in the military without all the danger, right? And it almost for a good portion of your service, it felt like, oh my gosh, like this is not a hardship. This is actually pretty amazing, right? It's a pretty easy gig. And then not only did you want to serve this greater purpose and, being deployed into Afghanistan, but now suddenly you wanted to go from being on the front lines, right in the kitchen, to the front lines of absolute danger. And I'm so curious about that, as far as where do you, looking back on it, where did this higher calling come from for you?
Part of it was sheer boredom. I mean, I cooking for the Admiral was 2 out of the 8 years I spent in the Navy. And it was definitely the highlight. But at least back at that time, they switched some jobs around. But the Navy looked at the Navy cooks as the military equivalent of, say, hotel restaurant management. And our version of the hotels are the barracks. So we have this sea shore rotation where we have to go to a sea duty or a ship, and then we rotate to a shore duty. Only shore duty for cooks uh, isn't the dining facilities on bases. That's civilian contractors. There might be one or two military cooks in there as management, but for the most part, Navy cooks went to the barracks. So when I went to do my shore duty, I sometimes was placed in the night clerk at the front desk of the bachelor quarters. And the good thing about that is that I could knock out, university, like college courses, and finish my degree. I finally finished, I was on the 16-year plan, but it wasn't a challenge. And the one thing that I did pick up there was a love for the challenge, right? It wasn't testing me the way I needed to be tested. And uh, that was definitely part of it. And then, of course, the attractive nature of the job. So it was kind of a, push and pull. And I tell people, once I got my first confirmed kill with an egg roll, I just started to wanted to save lives instead.
Wow, man. Well, thank you for sharing that. I was just so curious about that because, some people would just be like, hey, this is pretty easy. I'll get my years in and get all the perks and the benefits and not have to worry about all the other things that I have to deal with. But, what was it about the EOD team that intrigued you?
Well, of course, these guys were cool as cucumbers, right? I mean, they. I remember these a couple guys. They were Air Force techs, and one day they had their armored truck just dumped out in the parking lot in Afghanistan, and they were doing maintenance checks on everything, making sure all the batteries were good. There was no dust, dirt in the crevices, and the robots were working, all that kind of stuff. And it looked like a cool guy yard sale. And that's when I struck up a conversation with these guys and learned all about the what the nature of their job. And these EOD technicians, they are the first responders that handle anything that goes boom, from bullets to weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, roadside bombs, suicide vests, everything that explodes. It's a, imagine all of the uh, munitions that have been created over the years: grenades, landmines, rockets, missiles, all of these things. These guys somehow learn how to walk into a situation, assess the hazard, and render the area safe so that our troops can continue the mission. And it's just, from the outside looking in, it seemed absolutely impossible. But these guys, they just they were the ones that, I don't know, they had nerves of steel, and I wanted to be among them. And frankly, um, it just sounded like some way I could give back to the troops, and I could take care of my fellow service members. And the one thing that has always carried me forward, no matter how difficult the situation, is that if I'm doing my best for others, if I'm doing what's best for the person in front of me, those troops to my left and right, then I have a more fulfilling life. And this is just, it's also really fun to blow things up.
Oh man, you said it right there, which is this more fulfilling life. There's a lot of men out there that are not wired to take the easy route, right? We're wired to contribute. We're wired to do something that is greater than ourselves. And it sounds like you really stepped into that. If you don't mind, I would love for you to just share about that day in December in 2011.
Well, it was on my third deployment, and the Army's changed it since then, but they were all 1 year long, 12-month deployments. I went to Iraq, and then in 2011, I was a team leader by then. And it's the highest ranking guy on the team leader, who's actually the one that gets in the bomb suit and makes that long walk towards the unexploded ordnance, right, or the IED, the improvised explosive device. And that was me. We were 8 months and change into this deployment. We were actually getting ready to start packing up some of the equipment and redeploy back home. But I'd just come off of my 2 weeks of R&R, 2 weeks of vacation back stateside. And I got to see my firstborn boy turn 1. I got to witness the whole family gather around the Thanksgiving table. And we talk about being grateful. I mean, Thanksgiving's got to be my favorite holiday, especially because it's a reminder that we should be grateful all the time, but it's an excuse to gather around the table and just talk about gratitude with the people we love and the other family members. And of course, the other reason being it's one of those excuses to eat like an absolute glutton. But I was back in Afghanistan. I'd just come off the flight in Kandahar. My team picked me up in an armored truck. We jumped into a supply convoy to head back out to our command outpost in our area of operation. And along the way, there was an IED. So the convoy commander called back, EOD. This wasn't our responsibility. We were just kind of like hitchhikers in this convoy, but we were EOD techs, so of course we'll take care of it. They set up the security cordon around it, and we got to work. And the robot found what we were finding all the time. There were these homemade explosives in a vegetable oil jug with a 9-volt battery and a pressure plate made out of plywood, connected by lamp cord. So simple, so low tech, and so effective. Somebody described it. I mean, they were littered everywhere. It was a fellow EOD tech, a Marine friend of mine, who said, and put it great. It was like, he said, every step was a deliberate action. Is how walking around this area was, because they were everywhere. So the robot took care of business and ripped the components apart, but it couldn't get the jug out of the hardpack earth. And I wanted to get the evidence, because we serve as like the CSI for the battlefield. If we can get as much evidence from each of these IEDs as we can get to the bomb maker and the bomb emplacer and the bomb financier and all those guys.
Wow.
So I jumped out of the truck, and I started approaching with my metal detector, and you had to sweep in front of me, and a evidence kit about 20 or 30 meters from the original IED. There was a secondary device that hadn't yet been detected, and that's the one that punted me into the air, put my lights out, and I landed. My knees and elbows, my bell was rung, but I was still conscious. And I thought that my helmet had just gotten pushed over my face. So I did the function check, wiggled the fingers and toes and knees and elbows and the other extremities, and everything seemed to be right where I'd left it. So I was concerned about the mission, right? What's going to happen next? Is there going to be an ambush? Small arms fire? What is going on? My team's supposed to be cleared away. Just standard operating procedure. They clear, if the EOD team leader goes down, they clear a path and the medics can come in. But I was still conscious, so I want to get back in the fight. So I reached up to fix my helmet and found my helmet was gone and blown. My helmet clean off, my protection clean off, and that's when I realized that, oh no, this is bad. My commander's gonna kill me for losing that helmet. But oh yeah, I realized I actually did take some damage. My team grabbed me, dragged me back to the truck, and because we just left the airfield, the medevac chopper was there in like 14 minutes, and within 48 hours, I was in Walter Reed, Bethesda, Maryland, and the doctors were telling me that my eyes would never work again. And actually, I'd lost my right eye completely. My left eye had been gashed by a piece of fragmentation, so bad that they just couldn't save it. It also cracked my skull. So I was leaking spinal fluid, cerebral spinal fluid, right out through my sinuses, out my nose. Now, I still had my hearing at the time, but less so because they blew out both my eardrums. But I was blind, and that's when you start. Yeah, of course, you have all those emotions. I call them my demons. All those voices in the back of your head that say you're not. You can't do this anymore. You can't be a soldier anymore. You can't. You can't be a father, a husband. You're blind. What can you do? You can't. You can't do anything anymore. That your life is over. And all those what ifs, the why me's, all those other questions that you keep asking yourself. What if I'd done something differently? What if we jumped into a different convoy? What if I'd stepped here instead of there? What if I did a different procedure? What if I just dropped a block of C4 on that thing and screwed the evidence? I mean, all these questions that they can't be answered because it's all past tense, and you're left with the situation you've got. So, I mean, it's that spiral. It's like trying to get out of a cul-de-sac. Asking yourself that the negative, self-defeating, depressing.
Yeah.
This question. So, thank goodness for my family. Thank goodness for those other warriors up and down the halls that are all fighting their own, personal battles. And I mean, I had strong support all around me. And of course, the military training, the whole embrace the suck thing. It was like, here's your situation. You can cry about it, but then what? So you can only moan, cry, bitch for so long, and then you got to figure out, okay, what's next? And I realized that I don't have a monopoly on pain. Everybody here is, in this hospital is familiar with pain, is intimate with it. And who am I to just say I quit? Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that because it's hard. Was it General Jim Mattis at Call Sign Chaos said, at least in the Marines, things being hard were never a good excuse for mission failure. And I still had a mission, right? I still, at the time, was a soldier, an EOD technician, a team leader, still a husband, a father, son, brother. I had all these hats, all these roles, all these responsibilities. I was responsible to these people and for them. So even though I'd been injured and it was going to be hard, I had to figure it out. So I turned the questions around. I turned the statements around. Instead of, why was this happening to me? I started asking, why is this happening for me? What can I learn from this? And instead of asking, instead of saying, I can't, I just started asking, how can I? And I turned it from, from the obstacle to a challenge, right? An opportunity. And I just decided if I was going to be blind for the rest of my life, I'm going to be the best damn blind person I can be, the best damn blind me I can be. So I got to work.
Man, the power of I had Mark Devine on here. This was years ago, former commander in the Navy SEALs, and he spoke about this quite a bit, which is the quality of our life depends on the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves and those around us. So if we're asking questions around why I can't, well, your mind is going to give you those answers. Well, if you say, well, how might I, or how can I, it turns it into more of a solution-based mindset, more opportunistic. I would love for you to share your relationship with Michaela. Seems to be so tight. I've seen so many interviews with both of you guys and your boys in the background. Share with me, what your relationship, like how your relationship has grown out of this. From all I can tell, it's actually stronger than what it was. But share with us what that's been like, navigating marriage and this relationship, and just the roles that each of you guys have in the relationship.
Well, we've known each other since a very young age.
Right.
Our mothers were childhood friends themselves, growing up in Baltimore, and then my mom made her way to Ohio and raised her family there, and her mom ended up in Colorado and raised her girls there. Michaela eventually moved out to California. She was in Sacramento working. And this was after my injury. I was previously married and then divorced after going blind. That was just a bad situation. It was a bad decision on my part. But to be married to that person, though something incredible came out of that, first son. But I had to come to grips with the fact that I could no longer deploy to, face the truth at home. And 2014, I got a divorce and struck up a conversation with Michaela that we were barely Facebook acquaintances. Her mom would pack up the girls when they were very young and do the road trip thing all the way back to Baltimore each summer, occasionally stopping in Akron, Ohio to visit my mom and us. So yeah, we've got pictures of me and Michaela when she was like 5 years old, which is kind of weird. But yeah, a few years ago, I must have said something about. I think I made a joke on Facebook about what a pain, how inaccessible Tinder was for the blind. But she commented on, yeah, that was funny, and then we struck up this conversation. Right. First it was Messenger, then it was phone calls, and it was so funny how I'm a grown man, but it was one of those situations like when you're in middle school and you're talking in the middle of the night. It took all hours. And eventually I convinced her to come down to Florida where I'd ended up. Because after after my injury, I became an instructor at the EOD schoolhouse, uh, and then took my medical retirement. But I'd grown roots here in Florida, and I invited her out for a 1 week first date slash vacation, and we had an incredible time. And it was like we'd been already been dating for months and knew each other for years, and just hit it off. After that first encounter, though, as a different in a different role, different relationship. She had to return back to work in Sacramento. I had a speaking engagement and had to travel. Only a couple days later, I'm coming back from that speaking engagement, and I'm on the phone with her, of course, as I'm walking in the door to the house, and I'm feeling extremely fatigued and dizzy. It's a weird kind of dizzy, like vertigo, where all of a sudden all sense of balance is gone. Like when you're leaning back on the back 2 feet of your legs of a chair, and you don't know
Sure.
if you're going forward or backwards. Um, and I'm just waiting for the earth to come up and hit me on some direction. And then all of a sudden, I'd snap back out of it. I'm like, well, that was weird. And I told Michaela, I'll call you back. I'm going to go grab a nap or something. I don't know what I need, but I laid down, and I don't know how long it was until um, I woke up with a splitting headache. It was migraine, doesn't do it justice. It was like somebody poured acid right into my head. And I called 911. Turns out I'd contracted bacterial meningitis
Yeah.
right through that crack that we thought was patched, the crack in my skull. And I was right back in the hospital 4 years after the IED blast, and it almost killed me. I wasn't lucid for the first 4 days, but when I finally came out of the weird stupor, Michaela was right by my side. Like, how
Yeah.
did you get here so fast? But my mom was there, and it was like I was underwater. I couldn't hear. It was so faint and garbled and fuzzy. But they told me that the bacteria was stealing what was left of my hearing that the blast hadn't taken. So I asked the doctor when he broke the news, I'm like, so what you're telling me is I'm going to be 100% blind and 100% deaf? You mean I never have to pretend to pay attention ever again? Silver lining to everything.
Right.
But
Oh my gosh.
Michaela stayed by my side the entire time. She actually started communicating with me. I mean, there'd be a chance I'd be able to, hear again, sort of, with this cochlear implant. That's how we can communicate now. But then I was like, there was over 6 months before I could hear anything, and almost a year before I could actually have a real human to human conversation. So she started writing every single letter of every single word in the palm of my hand. Capital block letters because I'm a soldier. But that was the only way I could get a message in. And just imagine how isolating and lonely being totally deaf and totally blind is. But she nursed me back to health. And there was an added bonus gift in the ordeal, not just going totally deaf, but I also had lost my inner ear sense of balance, that vestibular balance.
Right.
Yeah, the bacteria took that too. So I came home in a wheelchair. For the previous 4 years, I'd been public speaking, talking about struggle and success, trauma and tragedy and triumph. And it was like God, with the same kind of sardonic humor, I said, well, Do it again. Put your money where your mouth is. Prove it. And I was thinking to myself, jerk. And, Michaela never went back home. She had her friends pack up her apartment, road trip in a trailer out to her. She stayed right by my side the entire time. It was about Thanksgiving time, and she and I decided that we were gonna. Of course, I'm not. It wasn't very pleasant to be around for a little while, and of course, it was turning those thoughts off of me and back towards others. And it was thinking about myself less and others more. And we decided we're just going to throw a huge Thanksgiving feast. And I started cooking weeks in advance. We invited everybody, family from all over the country, neighbors, friends, even some of those EOD students from the base nearby. That young guys sometimes get stranded without leave days earned up, or maybe money saved up to go visit their family, and the base kind of shuts down except for you know the skeleton staff. So it gets lonely on a base in the holidays. So we invited a few of those students over too. And I started making cakes and pies and cookies and just put them in the freezer. I started making batch after batch of fudge. And Michaela said she noticed two things. After 6 months, she noticed a smile on my face. I was having a good time. I was having fun in the kitchen. And the other thing she noticed was the fudge was piling up. It was
Good
more than
problem to
even.
have.
Was that?
So it's a good problem to have.
Yes, yes. I did tell people she started sneaking it out the front door to give it away to neighbors and stuff. Of course, you don't have to be very stealthy around a blind deaf guy. But she gave it away. People started coming back and asking for more and asking if they could buy it from us. And the capitalist in me said, well, of course you may. And just business just kind of evolved. So we started a company together. And then we decided to make the relationship official. We got married, and we started growing our family. So we had two more boys at the same time, who I'm told look exactly the same. Identical twins, because I shouldn't be the only one that's confused. And uh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I love my boys. Michaela's been amazing. We started taking the revenue from the fudge business, Extraordinary Delights, or EOD fudge,
EODs. Yeah. Saw that.
and we started buying real estate. And Michaela became an agent, and we have properties in Ohio and here in Florida. And now I still talk, speak, and I think I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Started a podcast, so my mouth. I tell people I've got very limited input, so I've got an overdeveloped output. Uh,
Man, what a
and
story. What a
yeah,
story.
and Miguel's been there every step of the way.
Tell me, yeah, I'm so curious about this. You've got three boys, and how old are the boys right now?
Right now, man, we're gonna have a teenager soon, just
Ooh,
days away.
yeah.
The oldest is 13, or 12 going on, and the twins are 4.5. Yeah, it's so funny. Um, the oldest is a little guy. He's a little dude for his age, but he's like one of those born athletes, right?
Yeah.
He's just ropey, and fast. We call him Hale on wheels. And
Perfect.
he's like a sports phenom. So lacrosse, soccer, cross country. He's a runner like his dad. He just takes to it. He like slips into flow seamlessly. He's like flipping a switch. Um, the twins are big. They're big. They're like two wrecking balls. Tank and Dozer. Um, the pediatrician said they're in the 96th percentile for
Wow.
size, and they're not fat. They're just big.
They're just big.
Yeah. So the daycare teachers call them here are the linebackers. And they're hilarious. They're so funny. Their personalities are completely different. Um, but they're little gremlin troublemakers. Uh, and they're really good at destroying the house as quickly as I can keep it, standing.
My gosh.
And
We have four boys.
it's
So
so much fun. That's another
it
one of those
is.
challenges.
We have four boys, 17, 15, 9, and 7. And I'll tell you, we joke about it that there isn't a dry toilet seat in the house anywhere. Yeah, it's just there's just pee everywhere. Like raising a house full of boys is just so funny. But yeah, I wouldn't change it either. As we as we wrap up here, I want to share a quote because it's just fascinating to me, and I just love this quote, which is, "End to the pain is one step beyond the most you can take." And I want to ask you what that quote means to you. But and as you think about that, there are other things that you've done with your life that, quite frankly, a lot of people a lot of people haven't done the things you've done. You've run the Boston Marathon twice, right? You've ran ultra marathons. You've mountain climbed. You've done a ton of things, despite these challenges that you face. And I look at these things that you're doing and that you've done, and most people who you know don't have the challenges that you do will find excuses and victimhood in reasons why they can't accomplish things like that. But I want to share that for context because this quote, when I was doing research on you, really hit me, and that is, "An end to the pain is one step beyond the most we can take." And what does that mean to you, and why was that an important quote for you?
Because it's that it's like the definition of resilience, and it's if we can endure just a little bit longer, we'll be able to see the light at the end, right? We'll become stronger. We'll find that relief, and the hardship when we look back, it's never as bad as when we're going right through it. So we got to remember to just just hold on a little bit more, a little bit longer, and trust in yourself, trust in those around you. Just this past 4th of July, 4th, 5th, and 6th, I ran the Badwater 135, 135 miles from the lowest point in North America to the Mount Whitney portal, just 11 miles away from the highest point in the contiguous 48. So from 282 feet below sea level, 135 miles with, I think it's something like 20,000 feet of cumulative gain up and down, right? And in 125, 130 degree weather. Yeah, so
Wow.
I remember the real crucible was this section called Father Crawley, and it's the second mountain climb. It's about 80 miles into the race. It's about a day, 24 or so hours already through this race. I'd already climbed over one mountain pass. I was going up the second one, and we I mean, we've already been through so much. It's so hot. It's so exhausting. And my feet are hurting. My legs are burning. I mean, it's really hot out there, and I'm exhausted and tired. Gone 80 miles, and still, around, a little over halfway. And I'm going up this 4,000 foot mountain pass with these switchbacks. And remember, my balance had gotten far better over time, but my balance is tied to my physical contact with the earth. Basically, my nerve endings, my muscles. I don't really have that inner ear gyro, so it's really about my legs. And not only have we gone long distance, time wise also, but now I'm going up. And every time there's a switchback, the road kind of does this bevel thing because it's like a racetrack curve. So every time we go around one of these switchbacks, gravity is trying to pull me across the white line and right into oncoming traffic. And all of these things combined, I finally hit that 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 point, that catalyst moment, that come to Jesus moment, right? The point where those demons are talking to me again and saying, you're not strong enough. You didn't prepare. You can't do this. It's too hard. It's too far. You have to quit. And it's like the endurance running is a great example because it's a simple example. They say in your standard marathon, 26.2 miles. The joke is after 20 miles you're halfway there because that's the first half is the physical part.
Right.
The second half is the mental part.
Mental part, yeah.
So the endurance running, like 135 miles across Death Valley, you hit that point all the time. And on Father Crawley, I was there. I could pick up and put down my feet until my veins pump battery acid and the bottoms of my feet wore off. But I'll still keep picking them up and putting them down. But now the added component of I could not control where they landed when I put them down. And I'm so terrified.
Wow.
And so I called a timeout. I got my crew together, and I'd gathered the best crew I could have ever imagined. And I told them what was going through my head. And they reminded me that they had not just like my nutrition, right? Hydration, calories, direction. They weren't just guiding me forward, but they also had my health and safety. They were right there with me, and they were in this race with me. I have my guides. They're running up that mountain too. I wasn't alone. And
Man.
all I had to do was take the next step and keep going. Because eventually we would get to the top of the mountain. And eventually, if I could take one more step and one more after that, we would get to the end of that 135 miles and cross the finish line. And we did.
That is unreal, man. What did it feel like to cross the finish line?
What's that?
What did it feel like to cross the finish line?
What did it feel like?
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
I became the first blind, deaf person to finish Badwater 135. But that didn't matter at all because I did it. We did it. And it was a personal accomplishment. Aaron Hale, ran from the Badwater Basin, Death Valley, over 2 mountain passes and halfway up the tallest mountain in the lower 48.
That is unreal, man. The final question I have for you as we wrap up here. Men are out there facing adversity, right? Some are in seasons of. I have 3 closest friends of mine literally as we speak, fighting cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you see these devastating effects that men are up against, these things that men are up against. And, our perception is our reality. And some men are walking through seasons of absolute strife in their marriages. Some men are separated from their kids right now. Some men or they are a support for one of their family members walking through something horrific, right? It doesn't really matter, but good times will be here and also valleys will be here. And I would love for you to just share any advice that you have for a man who's walking through some darkness right now and maybe to shed some light on his path.
Well, this is a fatherhood show. And sometimes really the only reason is so that you can show your kids how to struggle well, right?
How to struggle well.
How to live with integrity, with honor. How to face those hardships. Sometimes it's how to live well. Sometimes also it's how to die well. But before that happens, you're trying to pass on, that secret, right? You're trying to pass on the things that you learned. And sometimes it's not you telling, it's just you showing.
Right.
So you face the challenge the best you can, because sometimes, someday in the future, your kids they're going to have a hardship, and they're going to think about how you faced it. It's funny how many quotes or how many lessons I've learned from a meme. But there was something I read probably on a Facebook post. It said, someday the story of your struggle may be someone else's blueprint for survival.
That is so true. There's as a father and as a husband, we have a greater responsibility to show our kids what navigating hardship is all about. And you've done that so well, and I know it hasn't been without dark times. As we wrap up here, Aaron, I want to make sure that men who want to connect with you, they want to go support your mission. Maybe they want to go buy some EOD chocolates, right? Because I'm definitely going to buy some myself when I saw the video of how these things are made. And I just want to support you, man, to be honest, and what you're doing. But what is the best way for men to connect with you or just connect with your mission in general?
Well, they can learn more about me, and they can hear about other incredible stories on my show, Point of Impact with Aaron Hale. And if they wanted to buy some fudge and other treats, it's eodfudge.com.
Not a problem. We're gonna have that in the show notes for you guys, so you can go check those out. All you have to do to connect with Aaron, we'll also have his social media links in there as well. Go to thedadedge.com/455 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/455. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the show today, man. Your story, if I'm being honest, man, during you sharing it, I was getting really misty-eyed. The good things, the struggles, the recovery, the redemption. And I just love you, man. And I honor you for coming on the show and sharing this knowledge with us, brother. Thank you so much. And I'm going to speak for the audience, because I know that they're sharing in this as well when they hear it. Thank you for sharing this.
Larry, thank you for having me on. And I'm just trying to give back by being the best example I can and sharing the lessons I've learned.
Thank you, man. And keep sharing those lessons, because they're impacting the masses, my friend.